Good evening and welcome. Councillor Dennis Pennyworth, the chairman of Western Area Planning Committee, is unable to attend this evening, and therefore I, Councillor Tony Vickers, as the vice chairman, will be chairing this again, as I did last time. The other members of the committee joining me this evening are Councillors Adrian Abbs, Phil Barnett, Jeff Cant, Hilary Cole, Caroline Culver, Clive Hooker, Lynn Doherty, and Howard Wollaston. The following officers are attending to advise and support the meeting. Mr. Simon Till, Team Leader Western Area Planning. Mr. Bob Dray, Team Leader Development Control. Mr. Paul Goddard as Highways Officer. Mrs. Sharon Armour, Legal Advisor. Mrs. Jenny Mrs. Jenny Legg Clark. I'm also assisted by Mr. Kevin Griffin as the Zoom host for this evening. This meeting is taking place both over Zoom and with councillors present and COVID compliant in the council chamber. Following the expiry of the emergency coronavirus regulations that permitted remote meetings, all of the council's public meetings must now take place in person at a single specified geographic location with a physical presence at that location. Officers presenting items on the agenda and any parish council representatives, supporters, objectors, and the applicant or agent making a presentation to the committee have been encouraged to do so remotely via Zoom. The meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, so members of the public are able to follow the proceedings. For the benefit of those engaging remotely, I will ask the clerk, Mrs. Jenny Legg, to run through some standard reminders about the way we conduct council meetings via Zoom.
Thank you, Chairman. In addition to the usual points, only members of the committee in the council chamber are able to take part in the vote for the formal decision. If we need to adjourn the meeting for any reason, the chairman will advise the revised time and date of the meeting. If it's a short adjournment, then the Zoom meeting will recommence. Otherwise, a fresh appointment will be sent out. Do members have any questions about the way in which this meeting will be conducted? Sorry, can't hear you, Chairman.
I can see no questions from members in the room or hands up on the screen ahead of me. So can I please ask everyone present to switch off their mobile phones? We're not anticipating any fire alarm tests tonight, so therefore if the fire alarm does sound, please leave the council chamber using the fire exits to the far right and convene in the Dolphin car park. As a reminder to members, please remain socially distanced and wear a face covering when not seated. For those members speaking as ward members in the council chamber, please remain seated and don't approach the lectern. Thank you. As we have presenting officers and members joining us via Zoom, I would like to propose a non-notice procedural motion to suspend standing orders and permit all those joining the meeting virtually, including members who are not members of the committee and officers, to speak at the option of the chairman. We've done this a few times before, haven't we, committee members? Does that find a seconder to that proposal? Thank you, Councillor Cole. So, Mrs. Legg, have we received any apologies for this evening, please?
We have, Chairman. We've received one from Councillor Dennis Pennyworth, and he will be substituted for by Councillor Lynn Doherty.
I failed to ask for a vote on that last non-procedural motion, which was proposed from the chair, seconded by Councillor Cole. Can I please ask members to vote in favour? Thank you. That's done. Now, minutes. Item 2 is minutes of the last meeting. That meeting was on the 21st of July, and they're not available, but they will be for the next meeting of the Western Area Planning Committee. Members, do you have any observation on the minutes of the 30th June, which are in our pack? I can see none. Can I please have a proposer and seconder for the minutes of that meeting held on the 30th of June? Councillor Cole proposing, Councillor Woollaston seconding. Those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Just quickly sign the copy that I've been given. Right, item 3, declarations of interest. Have we any declarations of interest? Councillor Abbs.
Yes, I'm a Greenham Parish Councillor and actually chairman of the planning committee at Greenham Parish Council.
Councillor Palmer.
Likewise, Chairman, I'm a member of Greenham Parish Council also.
Councillor Culver.
Thank you, Chairman. I have been lobbied on this, but I will make my decision based on the evidence presented this evening. Thank you.
I should declare an interest myself as a member of Greenham Parish Council and of the neighbouring Newbury Town Council. I've not recently discussed this with either council as I've been missing meetings occasionally. So I will be taking part in the meeting and voting. So moving on to the main business tonight, we only have one item, that is application 20/02779 Command, land south of Newbury College, Monks Lane, Greenham. It's basically the discharge of a number of conditions. I won't read them all out. They're on your papers. We will mention them briefly as the officer presents, I expect. And this was deferred because there was some late objections, I think, by Highways to the parking drop-off arrangements, as we will hear. For the benefit of those watching, I'll briefly outline the format of every application, but in this case, just the one tonight. We'll first of all hear from officers presenting the application to the committee, and the drawings, the site plans, and any deemed relevant material submitted on the planning file will be shown as part of that presentation, after which representations can be made from each of the following groups and in this order. Firstly, any parish or town council representatives, then objectors, then supporters, and the applicant or agent, and then ward members. In fact, we have no parish, town council or objectors or supporters tonight, so we'll be moving straight from officer's presentation to the applicant. Speakers will be invited to join the meeting in order, either by Zoom or in this room. Each speaker or group will have a maximum total of 5 minutes to make their case to the committee, and that does apply to the ward members as well. Therefore, a group of speakers will need to agree a way of sharing their time allocation, and that applies to the applicant if we have more than one representing them tonight. Following that, the committee members will have an opportunity to ask questions for clarification of those speakers. And finally, the committee members will have the opportunity to ask questions of clarification of the officers presenting. Committee will then debate the application and vote on the decision. As I said, there's just the one application this evening, and I'll ask Mr. Simon Till to begin his presentation now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I should just share my screen for the presentation. Chairman, can I confirm that you can see my screen now?
We can.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, this application seeks various alterations to the 2018 Planning Permission for a new one-form entry primary school at Highwood Cotts. The application has been brought to committee due to being a major application submitted on behalf of the council. One letter of objection has been submitted. The planning application is retrospective, with the majority of the proposed works having been carried out during construction of the school. The application site is located to the south of the existing Newbury College site, to the west of the A339 dual carriageway, and to the east of the Sandalford housing allocation area. On page 20 of your agenda, at point 1.2, the case officer has listed the various alterations proposed. These include both alterations to the approved details and approval of information addressing conditions of the extant planning permission, and are as follows. A reduction to the number of previously approved kiss and drop parking spaces from 13 to 7 upon the school being brought into new use, and revised kiss and drop parking, bringing about a total of 6 additional parking spaces to be implemented at a later date. The introduction of a 2-metre tall fence between the playing pitch for the one form entry school and the expansion land that would be required should the school increase to a 2 form entry primary school. Increased areas of hard standing around the school, in particular to the west of the school building, between the building and the playing field to the east. Provision of a 2.4-metre tall fence around the entire multi-use games area in the southeastern corner. Provision of a 1.2-metre tall palisade picket fence around the early years area. Provision of a 0.4-metre tall knee rail to the front boundary of the school site. Relocation of the cycle store from the northeastern corner of the application site to within the application site west of the school building. The replacement of a 2-metre tall fence along the north and western boundary in the northwestern corner with a 1.1-metre tall post and rail fence. Provision of bollards to the front of the school between the kiss and drop parking area, and a reduction in the BREEAM level achieved from excellent to very good. The introduction of new lighting between the college and the A339 link road. Submission of details in respect of the mechanical plant, submission of details of the construction of the playing field and mugger, submission of a travel plan to satisfy condition 12 of the extant permission, submission of a cycle and scooter parking scheme to satisfy condition 13, and submission of landscaping details to satisfy condition 17. And the provision of an alternative scheme of electric vehicle charging points. Members, turning to the principle of development and the starting point for consideration of these alterations, it's important to note that the school benefits from the extant planning permission, and it is therefore the case that the principle of development of a school in a similar form in the same location to that proposed has already been accepted and is not for question. This is relevant to the concerns raised by Sport England, in particular in respect of the proposed erection of fencing. The vast majority of fencing proposed, including that which they have raised concerns with, which is between the playing pitch to the northwest and the land that may be required as part of a future expansion to 2 form entry. It's therefore the case officer's view that there is no reasonable objection to the erection of this fencing. While fencing of 2.4 metres alongside the mugger does require planning permission, it isn't considered that this raises concerns in respect of visual or other amenity impacts, and the majority of fencing would constitute permitted development in accordance with the school's permitted development rights. In respect of parking provision, you'll note that there's an amendment to the kiss and drop facility proposed. This would provide 7 new spaces now, with the remaining 6 spaces to be provided by the September 2025 term. This alteration has been made in consultation with the highways officer regarding the necessary amount of spaces. The 7 spaces provided at present are required to meet the level of parking need upon the commencement of the use of the school, with a further 6 required by 2025 as the number of pupils at the school increases. The highways officer has been consulted and is satisfied that this level of provision meets the level previously approved, and as such, as noted on the update, has confirmed that he has no objections. Members, you'll note that the proposal includes a reduction in the level of BREEAM compliance, which has resulted from an unfortunate and unusual set of circumstances. Due to the original development contractor going into administration, a substantial part of the evidence base for compliance with BREEAM, which is related to construction waste, was lost. This has prevented the development from being able to achieve the required number of credits for BREEAM Excellent. And while other options are understood to have been explored by the applicant, there was no reasonable way to make up for the deficit at this stage in construction. In this situation, officers had to consider that it would appear reasonable to accept that the applicant cannot achieve the level of policy compliance, and that this should be weighed against the public benefits of providing the school and the associated need for it. In weighing these considerations, the benefits are considered to merit an exception to policy to lower the requirement for BREEAM from excellent to the very good standard. In respect of the other matters raised in the report, you'll note that the lighting solution proposed allows for two options. One is for 19 lighting bollards of approximately 1 metre in height, and the other is for 7 lighting columns of approximately 5 metres in height. The case officer has considered both solutions and is satisfied that neither would result in any significant detrimental impact on the character and appearance of the area, the public amenity or biodiversity, and as such, condition 7 is proposed to allow for either to be implemented. Information has also been provided in respect to conditions of this extant consent in respect to noise from services, the construction of the mugger and the playing pitch, the location of the cycle and scooter store, and landscaping. These details are all considered acceptable. In respect of the travel plan, the officer's report does note that there was an objection from Greenham Parish Council and Newbury Town Council on the previous planning permission. The report goes on to note that details in respect to the matters of concern raised were approved under the previous permission. Neither council has made comments in respect to the travel plan submitted with this application, and as this matter is considered to have been addressed under the extant planning permission, no further concerns are raised in respect of it. Turning to the electric vehicle charging points, the case officer has confirmed that while the application proposes an alternative charging system, the same level of points are proposed at a slightly higher output, 7.2 kilowatts instead of 7 kilowatts. As such, officers raise no objection to this provision. Turning to the members, finally, referring to the update sheet, I can confirm that the recommendation and conditions remain as set out in your agenda report, and your officer's recommendation is for approval subject to those conditions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Till. Have we got Mr. Goddard present on Zoom to add to your comments?
Chairman, I'm afraid that Mr. Goddard appears not to have been able to attend the meeting.
Okay, in which case questions for him will have to be answered by you if there are any later. Turning now to the first of our speakers. As I said before, we have nobody from Greenham Parish Council or Newbury Town Council. We have no objectors, we have no supporters, but we have two gentlemen representing the applicant, that is the council, Mark Lewis and Mr. Bowman as well. If you would like to say your piece, you will have 5 minutes, and that will be timed by me when you're ready. Are they there? Can't see them. Well, there's Greg Bowman, Mark Lewis. Right. When you're ready, gentlemen.
Right. Good evening, Chair and members. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Thank you. So my name's Greg Bowman. I'm a project officer in property services at West Berkshire Council. I'm joined here tonight by my colleague, Mark Lewis, who is the Education, Place Planning and Development Manager at West Berkshire Council. We are here as the applicant. and we wish to speak in a sense, in support of the council's Section 73 application for the Highwood Copse Primary School. I believe the committee has visited the site, and you'll have seen what an inspiring addition it is to Newbury and to West Berkshire, that will benefit children in Newbury for many generations to come. The purpose of the application is twofold, as the case officer has outlined, essentially to provide information required to clear outstanding conditions as appropriate, and to bring to your attention and seek permission for some minor amendments to the existing permission, which we are seeking. As the case officer has outlined, Chair, these include the introduction of lighting to the north-south path between the college and the school to allow safe pedestrian and cycling access, the reduction of the BREEAM rating, amendments to the parking, and changes to the electric vehicle charging provision. We hope that you, the committee, will consent to support this, and we would welcome your questions.
That was well within your 5 minutes. Members, have we got any questions on that? Councillor Abbs, Councillor Culver, and I think we had Councillor Hooker. Is that right? No? Councillor Abbs first.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Bowman, during the site visit, you mentioned parking, and during the site visit, we saw that there wasn't, in fact, 7 bays for drop-off, but there appeared to be 6.5. Has anything changed since the site visit, please?
So yes, that was I say yes, it will be changing. So the fact that there was only 6.5 was as a result of, and in fact, I think you've seen it in the photos that came up in the presentation. There was, unfortunately, on the day that the line marker was attending site, there was a skip in the way, and that's now been removed. And tomorrow, the additional space, or rather the half a space, will be completed.
Okay, thank you.
That's your only questions, Councillor Abbs. Right, Councillor Culver.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, Mr. Bowman, I note in a few places in the document it talks about the school being at full capacity by September 2025, but I think that should be 2024 by my calculations, because it'd be 60 pupils in 2022, 90 in 2023, and 120 actually in 2024 rather than 2025.
Well, full capacity will be it's a 210 place primary school, so it won't be at full capacity until 2026, 27. You've caught me there. So
okay, yeah, it's just so that we can get clarity on this issue of when we need to have the 13 kiss and drop places, when we consider it to be at capacity, and for that requirement to kick in.
Well, certainly. So we'll have by, so it'll be at 120, which will obviously, that'll be almost half the school. It won't be at capacity at that point, but that's the sort of in discussion with Highways, that was the point at which they felt, we felt that would need further parking bays within the site. Up until then, the school can manage with the 7 on the southern side of the kiss and drop, and then obviously there is the lay-by on the public highway to the west of the school.
Okay, a couple of other questions, if I may, Chairman. It refers in 6.9 and also on page 38 to a turning circle. And I know that when we went on the site visit, questions were raised about whether there should be some kind of turning circle at the end of that widened road. I wonder if you could comment on that. Because I know there's concern about students getting out of the cars and there being a bit of confusion about which side of the car they get out and whether they'll walk in front of other cars. If we don't have a turning circle at the end, is there not a danger that that will happen along that stretch of road, in your opinion?
So in terms of the road itself, the adoptable highway, that was designed by Highways and built by our contractor as part of this application, and is obviously, I believe, due to then meet up with any development that might come from Sandford if and when that comes about. So there is no turning circle, and I don't have an opinion on that. The issue of the possible health and safety issue for children was related to within the school boundary, and to do with placing spaces as per the original 2018 permission on the northern side of that kiss and drop within the school boundary.
Okay, just one final question, Chairman. 6.17, it talks about the running track, and there seems to be concern from Sport England that the use of that is impeded by fencing. Is there intended to be a running track for the students?
So it's more a case of the school has, as it stands now, so with the fencing going across the expansion area of land, it does have the required total external space for one FE primary school. Within that, they can reasonably lay, should they wish, in terms of athletics in the summer, they can lay out mark up a running track for about 60 square meters, 60 meters in length. So they are sort of, we have met the DFE requirements in terms of providing for the curriculum at the school, and they will mark up what they see fit. And then if in the future the school moves to a two form of entry, they are, of course, would be able, and they take on that additional land, they will, of course, be able to make use of a longer running track up to 80 meters of length or more.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bowman. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Councillor Cant.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Bowman.
You need to mute your Zoom.
It's my apologies. It's muted.
I think just mute.
Yeah, I'm having technology problems. I've had bandwidth issues. So I'm getting no pictures of anybody. So it's must be passed out. So,
we will ask for your technical problems to be resolved. Meanwhile, I have a question myself. If that's all right with you, we'll let you have your technical problems resolved. Yeah, so I have a question for you, Mr. Bowman. You've just said that the one, I think you meant the one form entry total numbers will eventually be 210. Is that correct?
It is, yes.
210 pupils. So you'll have 210 parents, sets of parents, or something pretty near that, potentially, driving all the way down to the Swan Roundabout and back up again to reach the school to drop off their children. Is that right? And yet in the travel plan, you talk about having a no drive zone, a voluntary no drive zone. So my question is, are you envisaging that route down to the Swan Roundabout and back up again permanently? And where is the no drive zone, if that's the case, in your travel plan?
So on the, let me see, there was, for my time, there was a survey commissioned by, I think, Highways, which went into the various routes of driving, or of getting to the school, and that set out certain numbers of who would be getting there and how they would be getting there. Obviously, that would be as the demographics of the school, it's in terms of the this school does not have a particular, I'm trying to think of the words now, particular area it takes pupils from. It'll take whomever wants to, in a sense, go there. So they will be taking what modes of travel they have. Obviously, those driving, I believe, will be going down the A339 to the Swan roundabout and back up, yes, because that's how the highways designed road and access to the school has been designed. In terms of the no drive zone, I think that's probably not something, to be fair, I'm aware of the details, so I can't answer that.
Yeah, the answers are in the report, in the travel plan, which is part of what
Sure,
we're approving tonight. Can you then answer the simpler question is, what has changed in the revised travel plan, which clearly the parish and town councils had no concerns with the changes, but what were those changes? Do you know?
Yes, certainly. Bear with me 1 second. The elements of the changes were related to, one, there was additional placing people's names against the, bear with me 1 second, I have it here. There was a change of email addresses and names against certain actions. There was the addition of sort of firming up and of sentences about sustainable travel, such as introducing schemes to reduce car usage, without details on what they were. And then in terms of educating both pupils and parents about the environmental impacts related to travelling and about healthy lifestyles. There was a commitment from the Highwood Cops Academy to offer a cycle to work scheme for staff and to provide details relating to how that might work. They have committed to taking part in an annual Hands Up Travel Survey, and of course, being as a school that will only develop from the bottom up, they sort of will take some years for that sort of show some fruit, but they'll see them starting to gain data from this year, 2021, and then I think that's
fairly comprehensive list. It's certainly improvements, yes. So back to Councillor Cantz. Hopefully he's sorted his IT problems.
I don't think so yet, Chair. Forgive me, but I've been advised to use this for the moment while someone tries to resolve
Sounds good at the moment to me.
Yes, Mr. Bowman. I think the question I'd like to ask you is fairly straightforward. I can't find it in the report itself. I think my concern is whether you've done catchment area projections for this school, and if so, whether I'm trying to connect this up with the significant housing development taking place in Donington to the north of Newbury. I live on that side of town. I'm greatly concerned about the Robin Hood roundabout and the congestion that already exists, and the fact that we've been promised changes to that, which we don't see yet, but this is another addition to that. Is it likely that the catchment area would include a lot of people drawn across town from that new development, or have you done any projections as to where the traffic will come from?
So there were previously projections on where in the travel survey done in 2016. I don't have details to hand, but that assessment has been done. My colleague Michael Lewis may be able to answer more specifically your question about North Newbury, if I can bring him in.
I can hopefully shed some light on that. I mean, the North Newbury development has separate mitigation to what we're discussing this evening. The Highwood Cops Primary School, I believe they are their own admission authority, but I believe it works on distance. So the closer you are, the more chance you'll get in, and the further away you are, the less chance if they are full.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Are there any other questions from members? Councillor Abbs, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just one supplementary question was to do with the movement in the BREEAM level. This school was initially envisaged to have solar, which was removed due to budgetary constraints at roughly the same time we were, or shortly after we declared a climate emergency. So the question is, Mr. Bowman, did the construction take account of the trunking, etc., necessary for the solar to be installed, i.e. was it constructed and then it was just left off, or was it then the construction was actually changed so it can't be just put back on?
No, so I don't know the exact detail about trunking, but I have had it confirmed that should it come about the funding was found, that solar panels, PV, could be placed onto the building, onto the roof. We have explored it previously post a project board that closed the project back in November of last year. And at the time, the council's own budget for capital spend on PV doesn't stretch, as far as I'm aware, to buildings that are beyond those owned by the council. So this is a academy school, which is within the responsibility of the Newbury Academy Trust, run by Newbury College, and it's in a sense it's not a maintained school. We also sought to make use of the government's recently announced decarbonisation fund, which was opened last November, December. But unfortunately, we were advised by our consultants that the decarbonisation fund, whilst we were successful on some of our projects in schools of West Berkshire, unfortunately the scheme was very quickly oversubscribed, and so we couldn't make use of that either.
Okay, so the last little bit of that question relates to how far off from the original BREEAM requirement are we? In other words, if you had continued with the solar, would we have needed to do the drop that you're now asking for?
No, so yes, we would have needed. So
it's
even
not enough
with the
to
solar,
yeah, it's not enough to bridge the gap. Okay.
No, so we, I mean, it was the team previous to me, but the team previous to me, project officer and team previous to me, so I wasn't involved in the detail, but having discussed this with my professionals, there wasn't, essentially, we were at the cusp, so we were at, when we were going for BREEAM Excellence, we were at 70, and when we essentially at the stage of the project of where it was, when we when Dornus, the main contractor, went into administration, we lost that information. There wasn't, in terms of BREEAM, there wasn't the element to be able to actually substitute points. It's sort of this, a lot of the sort of points for BREEAM around and credits around.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman.
I think we've got the picture, Mr. Bowman. Thank you, Councillor Barnett.
Chairman, Mr. Bowman, Councillor Culver has touched on the matter regarding the increase in emissions over the next 2 or 3 years, and obviously the extra amount of vehicle generation. Now, as councillors, of course, we would very much like to see the parents or the guardians bringing children either on bicycles, walking, or other than using vehicles. But clearly, there is going to be a group of parents from a variety of areas which are going to necessitate driving to the school. And are you expecting all the parents to arrive? And let's take a 2-year period when perhaps it's doubled up, and there could well be anything up to 60 parents or so. Are you expecting those to all arrive at the same time, which of course could be causing a bit of a bottleneck regarding parking? That's the first question. And secondly, is it totally a drop-off, bearing in mind, of course, when we're talking about infants, the first group they would expect to probably be taken into school and not necessarily pushed out the door of the car and said cheerio by the parents or guardian. So there's two-part question there. Obviously, I have some slight concern that the number of parking at the present time is not going to be possibly adequate in an interim period. It might well be at a later stage, but the interim period.
So I think you're absolutely right on your second point in terms of the fact that in terms of operation of the school, because it will be 4 to 5 year olds and then 5 to 6 year olds for the first 2 years, they're not going to be just pushed out the door by their parents. Parents will expect, and children will expect naturally, to be walked to the school gates from the kiss and drop and from the parking by the parents. And so I foresee that happening. There will be, in terms of going back to your first question, I would anticipate that obviously between the drop-off times, in the sense of when the school's opening, parents will be coming at various times to drop off their children. They won't be all arriving at the same time, and they will be feeding through, in a sense. The school will need to manage that. They will have to see, sort of to a certain extent, how that works in the first few weeks and going forward.
You happy with that answer? Right. Thank you. No other questions from members. We have now ward members. Well, there are 3 of them. Councillor Marsh is not around. We did actually invite him to take that slot. Councillor Abbs and I then tossed a coin. Well, we didn't actually. I didn't think it was appropriate that I do the ward member slot from the chair. So, Councillor Abbs, you're doing the ward member slot, aren't you?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Certainly won't need the 5 minutes, but by all means, start the clock whenever you're ready.
Ready?
Thank you. Very brief history. We all know that, in fact, this Sandalford was meant to be delivering houses by 2016, and therefore this school was meant to be delivered after that had begun, and the road that is half constructed was meant to link eventually through to Monk's Lane, and that would have made for somewhat sensible of a travel plan, because you could have entered, rather than going down to the Swan roundabout, you could have come in through Monk's Lane and saved yourself a whole bunch of distance, etc. So let's keep that in the back of our minds, I think. We also got the situation where we have a temporary access through Newbury College. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, I'm chairman of Greenland Parish Council planning, and we were under the understanding at that time that the college didn't have any objections, and now apparently they do. I think the situation, otherwise we may have well had a different feedback from GPC. But we don't know that because we haven't been able to have a follow-up meeting. But as the ward member, I see the temporary access as being a very viable solution, and I really don't see why that can't remain in place until such time as the Sandalford is ever delivered. If it's never delivered, we have a perfectly viable solution via the temporary route. If it is delivered, then we have a viable solution via Monk's Lane and through the Sandalford development. So I think I'll suggest a couple of things at the end here. Was that about? Oh yeah, one other thing. It's Councillor Culver's already mentioned it, but on the site visit, we will remember the parking, the lay-by of the new road that I thought we'd all agreed would be an absolute disaster. But maybe I'll make that comment again later. So what I would like to suggest that members consider is that, first of all, we link in somehow this application to the Sandalford application in our conditions, because we either need the temporary permanently or we need the Sandalford delivered, and that we whoever can or somehow works with Ian Woolf of the college, such that we are allowed to kind of create some kind of drop-off solution within the college boundary, so we can have a walking bus type scenario of children, and actually aim towards what we all want, which is a much greener solution and much better in terms of travel. Finally, I would urge the members, although we can't really do it, is to be very cautious about just dropping this BREEAM, and I'm very disappointed as the ward member not to be seeing any way of delivering a new school with solar on it. It's very disappointing to do that. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abbs. Are there any questions to Councillor Abbs as ward member before we question the officer? Councillor Doherty.
Yeah, I just wondered where you got the impression that this school was built for Sandalford, because my understanding was that this school was built for the southern overflow of primary schools in that particular area. It was never connected to the Sandalford development. So I just wonder, as a point of order, where you get that impression from, because certainly when the school was constructed as portfolio holder, we were looking at the actual numbers that were in the primary schools in that vicinity, and this was not connected to Sandalford.
Well, the travel plan then, as it was, is what I'd argue against. I didn't actually say that it was connected to Sandalford. I said that there would be a connection through Sandalford from down to Monk's Lane. So it's the connection that the road has been built as though Sandalford will be there. So we can't ignore the fact that the travel plan has designed a road to go through Sandalford. So it is now linked, even if it wasn't originally. So.
I can concur to that, Councillor Doherty. It was always intended at the time of the road being built that it would link through the Sandalford side. It's not serving
the
Sandalford residents.
Councillor Abbs gave the impression that it was serving the catchment.
The way he put it, I can understand you took it that way. Thank you.
I hope that clarified. Okay.
There being no other questions to Councillor Abbs that I can see, then any questions to Mr. Till? If you can use the on-screen hand, but I did see you first, Councillor Culver, in both senses, and then Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Till, I just wanted to raise this issue again about the needing to have the extra kiss and drop places by the time the students cohort has reached 120. Unless my maths are wrong, it will reach 120 pupils by September 2024, not 2025. I think we need to make sure we get that correct, because obviously we don't want to say to them they've got until 2025 to do it when actually it needs to be done by 24. It says clearly in 6.11 that there will be 30 in 2021, 60 in 2022, 90 in 2023, so 120 would be in 2024. So it might sound pedantic, but obviously we need to be clear in the conditions about when those extra places would need to be available. And just another couple of questions, if I may, Chairman. In order to provide the extra kiss and drops, it talks about the need to move some of the trees in 6.10. And I was wondering whether we ought to do that sooner rather than later, rather than wait another 3 years, because the trees might be well established by then. And my final question, if I may, Chairman, it refers in 6.25 to a risk of vandalism to the lights. Have we found with those lower lights before in the district that we have had a lot of vandalism? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Culver. In respect of the timing for provision of the kiss and drop spaces, I don't pretend to have the amount of familiarity that Mr. Bowman has with this application, and he says that the applicable date is 2025. But at the same time, Councillor Culver, your maths would seem to be correct in indicating an earlier date. So if members were minded to amend the recommended condition to provision of those spaces by 2024, I think the grounds would be reasonable, and should it prove unnecessary, the applicant could always seek a amendment to that condition at a later date. Sorry, Councillor Culver, could you move on to the second part of the question?
There were trees and there was the lighting columns, I think. Is that right?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, whether we should move the trees sooner rather than later, rather than wait another 3 years, and also whether we've experienced vandalism to the smaller light or the lower lights before.
In respect of moving the trees, that really is the school's own prerogative in terms of ensuring that the trees are moved in such a manner as to prevent harm to them. Should they need to move them at an earlier date, then I would imagine that the landscaping advice that they take from their consultant will result in them moving them at an earlier date. But I don't think that in respect of conditions, there's a requirement for any alterations to those proposed. In respect of vandalism of lighting columns, I'm afraid that I don't have any pertinent information to advise the committee as far as that's concerned. Simply that the applicant has indicated a preference towards the higher column solution rather than the bollard solution, and our officer who's assessed this matter has raised no objection to either. So I would suggest that the school is likely to install the solution that is less likely to cost them money in the long run.
Thank you, Councillor Culver. We have Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a question on lighting, Mr. Till, on condition 5. Can this committee decide which lighting scheme is to be used if we have a preference for one over the other?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Cole. Councillor Cole, absolutely the committee can decide to amend the recommended condition in favour of one or the other lighting scheme. The condition is recommended thus because the case officer hasn't found any material grounds to prefer one scheme to the other.
Thank you very much for that. I have a question, Mr. Till. In paragraph 6.9 of your report, you're talking about the ability to park on the link road in that lay-by. We've already heard reference to the lack of a turning circle there. So would you envisage it being, if you like, in the short-term banned parking there to avoid sort of chaos with people doing 3 or 5 point turns in the width of the road, at least until there is a through route there? Or are people going to still be allowed to use that lay-by as the school fills up?
Thank you, Chairman. The Highways officer has made a comprehensive assessment of the parking provision and the road layout in respect of both this application and the previous planning permission that exists on the site. And I'd like to remind members that the extant planning permission is the applicant's fallback position. So imposing conditions in respect of a matter that has already been approved in effect in that fallback position would be fundamentally unreasonable in officers' view. In respect of the limitation of parking, the school have a duty of care to people who are using their roads for access and should take sufficient precautions in order to ensure that no dangerous highway situations occur on the site. But I don't believe that there is any ability to impose additional conditions where a viable fallback position where those conditions haven't already been imposed exists.
Can I have a supplementary? Well, I will have a supplementary as I'm the chair. I decide these things on that matter. When you say the school has a duty of care, do you mean the head teacher or do you mean the academy sponsors, which are Newbury College, which have a huge amount of land very nearby, which they could make available to resolve this situation? So who is actually responsible in planning or in other legal sense for the safety of the pupils? I understand who's responsible once they're on the school land, but when they're on highway land, but they are connected with the school because these are their pupils, who is responsible and what can we do about it tonight?
Thank you, Chairman. I think we're somewhat going beyond the reach of this planning application in this line of questioning. The red line is the red line, and it is the application site that is for control. Now, Newbury College might have ownership of the land, but ultimately the duty of care falls to the school and the head teacher in terms of ensuring that parents and pupils are looked after properly when attending their site. I've heard from Councillor Abbs earlier this evening the suggestion that land on Newbury College might be taken into use to resolve any potential excess parking issue, but that land doesn't form part of the application site, and we have no ability to control that within this planning application. So unfortunately, Chairman, I think I'm unable to provide you with any steer regarding a potential solution that could be imposed in those concerns, but I would like to refer you back again to the fact that there is an extant planning permission that represents the material fallback position on this.
Have you anything to add as a legal officer, Mrs. Armour?
No, I would concur with what Mr. Till has just said. I think we need to focus on the application before us.
But we could work within the red line to try and find a solution, and the red line does include land north of the link road, for example.
I think you need to be mindful of the fallback position and mindful of what's actually being applied for in terms of the amendments.
Okay, thank you. Can see a couple of more hands up. I've got Councillor Abbs again, and then Councillor Hooker, and then Councillor Cole.
Actually, Councillor Hooker was well before me. I don't know how I've skipped by him, so I'll defer to Councillor Hooker.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Till, my question is one on the information we've been given about, obviously, the original developer went into administration. And my question is this business of the BREEAM data lost. And my question is, how robust were you in interrogating whoever it may be with this previous company of getting this information? I find it quite strange that in this day of paperless and computer-driven projects, that this wouldn't have been, even if the company had gone into administration, it had been backed up on some chip or something or other, that this information would have been available if we'd have persisted. Because where we find ourselves now, of course, is that we've had to reduce this from excellent, which we set it at, and then capitulate because apparently the information's gone AWOL, down to very good, which I think is disappointing.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Hooker, I agree with you that it is disappointing to have to reduce the level of compliance. However, I am aware from the discussions that have taken place with the applicants that the missing information is a perfectly legitimate difficulty with proving that the development can meet BREEAM Excellent. I'm also aware that this was project managed with that task in mind, but where information is held purely by the contractor and the contractor goes into administration, and then the records of that administration go into the hands of various third parties, I'm minded to say that I could accept the explanation that the information had gone missing, and I don't think that there was, I find it implausible to suggest that there was any intention to deceive in order to fudge over any failure to comply with BREEAM, given that the information that we've been provided in terms of BREEAM suggests that the exercise has been project managed in such a manner as to seek to meet BREEAM excellent. Knowing the manner in which the BREEAM system works and the point scoring on it, if one loses points in one area that are a significant number of points, then that can considerably detract from the scheme, from the ability of a scheme to meet a BREEAM level. And as was discussed earlier, the potential for other methods being used to meet that level was explored, but it hasn't been possible in this case. I do accept the applicant's statement regarding that. Thank you, Chairman.
Was that the only question you had, Councillor Hooker? Councillor Abbs, did you have any more questions? Your hand's still up. Over to you then.
Thank you very much. Mr. Till, the slot 6.5, the one that's not been painted because they ran out of paint so far. What is the turning circle that we work on for smoothly exiting from a bay like that out of that gate? What is there a measurement that we use?
I anticipate, and I'm afraid I will have to answer this question from a point of not being an expert on the highways technical details, but being that the highways officer has checked over this scheme and has confirmed that it provides parking in accordance with what their requirements are, that the turning requirements for access to that parking slot are accordant with highways requirements. I'm sorry, I can't be of any more assistance in terms of technical information than that, Councillor Abbs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Till. Would it be possible for us to make sure on this via some kind of amendment when we get there? The reason on the site visit, admittedly, only half of the slot was painted. However, when standing where the slot should have finished, I'm pretty sure my own car wouldn't be able to just turn smoothly out. And the reason it's important is as we have a shortage of kiss and drop slots there, potentially, if it's not a smooth flow and we start getting cars not being able to make it out in one turn and reversing backward, it creates absolute havoc. And so I think we need to be very, very careful here that the officer, because it was only 6.5 was painted, did he do it from the diagrams? Did he do it from a site visit? Just to get that assurance that we really have got the right turning circle to get out there.
Thank you, Councillor Abbs. The highways officer has measured the provision from the plans that have been provided. So I can confirm that those plans comply with highways standards. If there was any discrepancy found to have occurred, then that would be a matter that could be investigated and action to rectify it could be taken. But the conditions proposed require compliance with the plans, and those plans do show sufficient space and turning for that space.
I guess we'll wait and see.
Thank you. I can't see any other hands up for questions to officers. So that being the case, we can move into a debate. And there are a number of sort of quite separate issues in this application. So I sensed that the biggest issue is related to school drop-off, parking places, travel plan, that sort of area. So I'd like to deal with anything else first to get those, what I think are simpler issues out of the way. And can we have sort of separate mini debates on the very distinct issues, members? So on anything but travel plan and parking first.
I'm not travel plan or
Councillor
parking,
Cole.
Chairman,
Yeah.
but I want to make a comment or a statement before I say what I want to say about lighting, and that I feel that we are edging towards being in danger of amending this planning application on the fly. And I just want to remind members that we should be considering the application as it is set out before us, and not trying to change things just because we feel we might have a better idea. And I think members just need to really consider that when we're debating with regard to drop-off and other car parking spaces. My comment is on the lighting. My preference, if we can decide, and other members may have a different view, of course, is that we have low-level bollard lighting to avoid excessive light pollution. I appreciate, looking at the lighting schemes, that they are very, the column lights are quite direct. But I just think for the aesthetics of the scheme and the lighting itself, I would prefer to see low-level bollard lighting than columns, which urbanises the site. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cole. That's just a sort of very specific start on a very specific point that I want. On that subject, has anybody got another view, or is anybody prepared to second that? Because I think it might be easier if we dealt with individual issues like that one at a time and get them out of the way. Is that an acceptable way of doing things, Mrs. Armour?
Well, I think we need to have a proposal, and I would suggest we have a proposal for the whole thing, because at the moment we don't know if members are going to approve it or disapprove it. So an
approval, and then
what I would suggest is that we've discussed this. Everyone's noted Councillor Cole's point. If there's a proposal, that proposer can actually say yes, they want to amend that condition when they make the proposal.
Okay, thank you very much. Next comment, anybody else wishing to speak? Got no hands up on my scar. Councillor Hooker.
Thank you, Chairman. Mine's just, before we start the debate, a general overview of this whole project. I can remember 2 years ago with members of this committee sitting down and having the site meeting where it's a grass field, and sitting down and discussing this application at length. And we were quite specific in the conditions that we asked for, such as to kiss and drop. We've heard tonight about the developer has lost the information on Briam. And I'd just like to ask the question, really, and for us to give it some consideration of, what is the process that this applicant has gone through to appear to have made numerous changes. We've heard about the tarmac play area on site. I think we heard that this was at the behest of the apparent new head mistress or master, who thought it would be better a bit more tarmac. We've reduced the kiss and drop. We discussed that at length. And now we're just told, well, I know you've discussed it, but we've changed it. On the understanding that it's not safe for the children to get out of the car on certain sides. And I find it difficult to think that any parent is going to open the door and let a 5-year-old get out and run across the road. Parents are going to take responsibility, but that's been changed as well. All of a sudden got the introduction of lighting. That's come in, change it. Effectively, we've taken away a whole football field of playing area. We looked at all this. That wasn't considered that ought to be something that ought to be looked at. The erection of 2-metre-high fences come up from nowhere. Knee-high rails have gone up on the outside from nowhere. Service equipment changes have just been made. And I just asked the question of who project managed this. Who, in fact, had given the developer the approval to make these changes with the expectation that this committee tonight would just give it a rubber stamp. Are we going to say, cut up the tarmac? Are we going to say, take down the 2-metre fence? On this basis, any developer can make any damn change he likes with the expectation that this committee will approve it. And I asked the question of what, considering who the applicant is in this, what West Bath Council planning, what their thoughts would be if a private developer, let's say, had built a hotel, then turned up a year later and said, oh, by the way, I've made these 10 changes. I expect you to change them all with your committee. I'd like to ask the question, where's the link between the project manager, the developer, and the planning department of this council to give even, for want of a better word, a pre-app type consideration as to whether this is even acceptable? And I find this tonight rather embarrassing. I don't think that's a very good sample going forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Well, thank you very much. I concur with much of that, although I wasn't on this committee. I think it was more than 2 years ago when the application was approved. And but the general point that this council, as an applicant, sometimes behaves, shall we say, less robustly in terms of process than some other applicants who are not this council, and it does concern me as well. Members, I think we've got more to say. We have to lead towards a proposal that we either accept this application with all these retrospective changes or we don't, in which case, well, there's a whole bag of worms. And the one area where I think we can have discretion without incurring great expense is in the area of the travel plan, which is why I think we could come on to that. Certainly the link between that and the physical kiss and drop, the physical parking arrangements seems clear to us ward members, I think. Members, I've got Councillor Cant now put his hand up. Thank you, Councillor Cant.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try this again. It seems to be okay. I've much sympathy with what Councillor Hooker says. I suppose the concern I would have is to what extent the delivery of educational services to young people in the area would be affected were we to impede the progress of this planning application. I mean, with every sympathy for the points you make on adequate project management and better control, I just wonder whether we should reflect on the impact not going ahead with this might have on the generations to come who will use the school.
Thank you, Councillor Cant. Would it be helpful if I suggested something from the chair, which we ward members have discussed, and throw it out there as a way in which we could, because I think what's proposed is acceptable for at least 2 years, possibly 3, with a small number of pupils. But if within the travel plan, and I suggest I may be corrected by the legal officer on this, but I would suggest that within the travel plan, which already talks about, and I quote from their action plan on page 11, it's not in our agenda papers, but it's on the website, that one of the actions to start by Easter next year is to establish a voluntary no drive zone. And I mentioned that in my question from here, to encourage more parents who have to drive to school to park further away. Well, now, within the college, there is a potential drop-off point with cover from weather, which is the college's own bus stop. It doesn't seem to be too difficult, too onerous to ask the school within 3 years to establish a park and stride from there. It wouldn't take up parking spaces because the parents could drop off at the bus stop or near the bus stop, and the school could organise somebody to supervise pupils from there going down to the school the other side of the link road. And all of this is only required because we haven't got that complete link road through to Monks Lane. So I think we could also link something. There's very little reference in the travel plan to Sandalford. In the sort of context section, it actually says there is potential for the road, i.e. the link road, to be extended at a later date to the west. Well, I think we've got to assume that that will happen, but whether it will happen within the 3 years which we've got before I think the number of parking spaces available becomes inadequate, I think is a moot point. So I would like to set some sort of a condition whereby within 3 years, the travel plan is reviewed to look at the newly evolving situation and specifically to look at the potential of a kiss and drop and walking bus arrangement, which is down in their action plan, but not being referred to in this planning application in the sort of headline area or in the officer's report. I'll open that to others to comment on. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Chairman. I understand the points you're making, but the question I think we need to clear from officers is what you are suggesting or proposing as an additional condition too much of a deviation from the application before us tonight, or is it acceptable? And if it's acceptable to the officer, then I would support it, but if not, then we can't.
Over to you, Mrs. Ullman. Thank you.
Well, I think Mr. Till might need to come in as well, because he's obviously seen the full application documents. But I'm assuming that what you're proposing to do is condition 10, which relates to the travel plan, amending that so that it comes into effect, but there's a revision clause that asks for it to be revised.
That's correct.
Within a certain time. And then I guess you would need to discuss who's going to approve those revisions, whether it's just some of the comments you've made tonight. Officers can make that decision, which would be the normal position, to be fair, because it won't. Yeah, I think I'll leave it to Mr. Till, because he might have further comments depending on what's been applied for.
Yeah, Mr. Till.
Thank you, Chairman. My interpretation of this is that you would seek an amendment to the travel plan condition to require a review of the travel plan within 3 years of the commencement of use of the school, to review the adequacy of the kiss and drop facility, and to explore options for provision of facilities such as a walk and drop facility, in order to account for any shortfall in parking provision for parents dropping children to school. And I think that that is a requirement that could be imposed as an addition to the travel plan condition, without imposing an additional onerous requirement on the applicant. So I would suggest wording to the effect of what I've just said, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Till. I think that the technical term in these areas is park and stride, but that's what I'm proposing. And in that case, Councillor Cole, you say you're prepared to second that proposal. Thank you. Are there any other comments?
Sorry, can I just clarify? Have you made a proposal to approve this application?
No, we haven't done yet, but I'm happy to if somebody else doesn't. We've got a seconding of an amendment, but we haven't got a substantive proposal on the application that's before us. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying, is your proposal, you're proposing approval subject to that condition being amended, and am I right to assume the lighting condition to be amended as well? And
we could do it that way if you take it as a proposal from me at the chair, in the chair.
I think we do need a proposal.
Yeah. Okay. Proposer or a seconder? I did propose it and you indicated you would second.
But I was merely agreeing at that stage that what Mr. Till was suggesting was acceptable to me.
Yes, I hadn't formally proposed it because we were waiting for officers' advice, weren't we? Councillor Doherty, yeah.
Yeah, that kind of went quite quick. I was only going to say I was happy with Simon's proposal. I wasn't happy with your proposal around any detail about what that should be, because I think we should leave it to the people that actually understand kiss and drop, the head teacher, to work through. So happy with a review of the kiss and drop, but I don't think we should be the ones saying where it should be or anything else.
I would agree with that. We just don't know what's going to happen within 3 years with the Sandalford Link Road, etc. So yes, Councillor Kent.
Forgive me, Chair. As usual, I guess I've got slightly confused by the course of this. It looks to me as if what's being proposed, however it's worded technically, is to do with the future management of the access of parents and children attending the school. I don't feel, unless the officers say, you know, that's not the case, it doesn't feel like it's anything to do with planning. It feels like the continuing management review of the way the school is used as a facility. And I'm just baffled as to whether I'm voting for something that is beyond our capacity to impose.
Well, I just said that we are one of the things we're asked to do tonight is to approve a travel plan, and I think that's where the link is. It is part of this application for us to discharge the travel plan, and if we're happy to do that with that minor amendment that it should be reviewed, I think that's, and I'd much rather we do that now than for us as ward members, when we've got a problem in 3 years, to have to beg the school to change its management plans, because it's tied into a planning application this way. I mean, we all know that this is one of the main problems in our wards, isn't it?
Sorry, can I just have a point of order? And it's probably my inexperience in planning. The ward, as a ward member, you've spoken, but are you taking part in this debate as chairman or as a ward member? Because if anybody else here had ward member issues, we wouldn't be having the opportunity to insist on this to save us as ward members. So I just not quite, I'm kind of with Councillor Camp there. I'm kind of feel we're doing something because you're ward member and chairman. Would we be doing that anyway? I ask that in all open honesty because of my experience in these matters.
Mrs. Armour, I don't think I'm departing from, I can understand Councillor Doherty's point, but I'm picking up on a point that was raised by my colleague, Councillor Abbs, in his ward member speech, and just trying to move the debate on.
So to clarify, in terms of the debate and the decision you make, you're making it as a member of the committee, not in your role as a ward member.
I mentioned the role as ward member in terms of when it comes to reviewing it down the line, that would be the role of a ward member, whether it was me or somebody else. That was really the context.
I think it was the way it could have implied something different, I think is what. So.
Which situation we find ourselves in, the chairman would be able to vote, staying on this and show this
Sorry, I couldn't hear you, Councillor Hooker.
Thank you. I was just asking Mrs. Armour, with the discussion that's just taken place, whether or not the chairman would have to abstain on this, having mentioned this business of an interest as a ward member, as Councillor Doherty brought up.
I think it's up to obviously the chair whether he feels he can't vote because of any interest. I haven't had a discussion with him about that. I agree that the comment was made, did sound like it was made from a ward member point of view. However, I think, the chair has been on the committee for a considerable period of time. So I think it's really up to him whether he feels he's got an interest and that interest is barring him from voting.
I just feel we have to make sure that we are transparent in this situation. It doesn't proliferate.
Colleagues, members, it is up to us as individuals. My feeling is that unless I have a personal interest, i.e. I live next to the school or near the school, and I don't even live in the ward, but I represent my ward and I have to think about issues that will arise in the ward. And I don't see a problem. I mean, otherwise you could say that a ward member never votes on an application in their ward, if they've got any sorts of feelings about it.
But Chairman, I agree that with your last comment about ward members perhaps not voting, but I think you, in my personal opinion, and using my experience as a long-serving member of this planning committee, you have compromised yourself with regard to voting on this, because you have mentioned yourself as ward member on several occasions. And I'm sorry to have to say that, but I really feel that you have compromised yourself.
Well, I will consider what you've said, members, and we haven't yet had the vote, but if somebody else wants to move the motion.
So, Chairman, that's what my hand was raised for, so I can formally move the motion to approve this application, despite it being retrospective, which I also dislike intensely, to be honest, Councillor Hooker, with the following amendments: the travel plan as outlined by Mr. Till, and as the lighting as outlined by Councillor Cole. Does that find a second? Oh,
does that find a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Cole. Those in favour?
Can I just add, Councillor Culver raised the point about the 2024-2025, so that might actually end up being covered by the travel plan, but I didn't know if anyone wanted to amend that as well.
I think we just need to make sure that we've got the figure correct.
I think you could say, because the figure of 120 is in the report. whenever that arises, if that's what the highways officer believes is the maximum before.
Yeah, I think the issue is 120 does arise in 2024. I think the maths is right there. What isn't clear is whether it's if you get to 120, there's a problem, or if you go over 120. So obviously you'd go over 120 when you get to 150, which would be 2025. And I think that's the point that wasn't clear, in my view.
Exactly. So in answer to your question, Councillor Culver, do you want that to be incorporated in the motion?
Yeah, I mean, in 6.11, it says occupied by 120 pupils. So that would suggest that those extra places need to be available by the time 120 students are there. So that would be September 2024.
Right.
As opposed to above 120, it says by 120.
Can we incorporate that in the motion, Councillor Abbs? It's your motion.
I'm happy to
Happy with that?
incorporate that.
Seconder? Can I have those in favour of that resolution? Note that I'm not voting. My vote isn't needed. So we're all happy, I hope. That resolution is passed. Thank you, members. All right, those against?
I haven't voted.
Yes, I thought you were probably abstaining. Thank you,
I
Councillor.
will abstain, and the reason is that the number of these retrospective amendments, the extent of them, and the timing.
Would you like, members, for us to ask for an informative to be minuted that we're unhappy with the number and extent? Would that be something we could do?
Yes,
Very
but
much.
can I also clarify, Councillor Huckle, are you voting against the motion or are you abstaining?
I'm abstaining.
I think he's abstaining, yes. So that motion is carried. That's dealt with the main business. I just wanted to turn on to the matter of an informative, whether we minute that, bring it out in that respect.
I think it will be in the minutes. I'm not sure it's really appropriate to put in an
Okay.
informative. It's something that, yes, can be recorded
Okay.
in the minutes and people might want to take up outside this committee, but I don't feel it really requires an informative.
Thank you very much. I think Councillor Hooker's indicated he's happy with that. In that case, members, there being no other business, close the meeting.